1986. Section 5, working with percentages. So percentage means 100 per 100, right? So 20% is 0.2 or 20 over 100. Use your number sense when working with percentage questions. Ask yourself whether or not an answer seems reasonable. Well, you should always do that, of course, but it is important to have consistent algorithms. Use a step-by-step procedure to set up and solve these equations to be confident about your answers. Let's look at some easy questions real quick so we can get our footing here. If we look at 20%, we want to turn this into a decimal. You could divide 20 by 100 to find the decimal equivalent. That's going to be 0.2. You could also think that you move the decimal place 2 places to the left, right? That's another way of thinking of how we got that decimal value. For something like 33.78%, you could divide by 100, or you could move the decimal place 2 places to the left. It's totally equivalent, and you'll find 0.3378. Same thing with 300%. If we want to turn that into a decimal value, what can I do? I can divide that by 100. I find the number 3, or you can just say I move the decimal place 2 places to the left. What about 0.22%? Well, you got to move it 2 places to the left, or you said, well, I divide it by 100. It's going to be 0.0022. Okay. Let's go the other way. Let's go from decimals to percentage. In this way, we are going to multiply by 100. So 0.97 would be 97%. 0.6788 would be 67.88%. 0.00347 would be 0.347. Notice that it's still a decimal, even if I move the decimal place 2 places or multiply it by 100. It's still a decimal, and that can happen sometimes. A little confusing, so watch for that, but yeah, so that's still true. And then the decimal of 5, well, that's going to be just like our 300%. That's going to be 500%. Okay, so I hope that helps. Next thing I want to look at is equation method. So we are going to look at some word problems for percent problems. And doing this, generally students want to use an equation method. And that's what I want to talk about now. So we can solve percent problems by proportion or equations. If we choose to use the equation method, we will use percent times base equals amount, or P times B equals A. It may be helpful to use the phrase, the percent always acts on the base. Okay? We will always choose to use a decimal version in our equations rather than the percentage. That being said, for 20%, we're going to use in our equation 0.2 instead of 20. Okay? Let's look at that equation one more time. So if we're going from proportions to this equation. We can do this by looking at, if you see that proportion is over 100, well, 100% is simply 1, so we can form this equation. Now let's look at some examples and see how this works. What is 0.0056% of 24,000? What number is that? So 0.0056% of 24,000 is what number? So let's set up our equation. Percent times base equals amount. So the percent is obviously that 0.0056%, but I have to move the decimal place because they gave me a percentage. So I have to move the decimal place 2 places to the left. I multiply it by 24,000, and that is going to be the amount. What is that amount? It's 1.344. So 1.344 is 0.0056% of 24,000. Kind of a hard example, but you'll see ones very similar in the homework, so I wanted to do something like that. All right, so 1.344 as the answer. Okay. So another example, 200% of 17 is what number? Let's set up our equation. Percentage times base equals amount. Okay, well, the percentage is 200, so that's 2. The base is 17, so the amount will be 2 times 17. And what's that? That's 20 plus 14, that's 34. So it's 34. Okay, let's look at another example. 18 is what percentage of 90? Now we're looking for the percentage. We're not given the percentage. We are looking for the percentage. Okay, so here's our equation. Percentage times base equals amount. Well, what is the amount? What is the base? So I like to look at the is and of. It's kind of how I do these problems. So of 90 tells me the base. Is 18 is the amount. So the equation will go x times 90 equals 18. 18 is what percentage of 90? So that means I have to divide both sides by 90 to acquire x. And what would that value be? It would be 0.2. Well, what is that percentage? That's 20%. Okay, so that's how you can find what is the base, what is the amount, and how to solve for percentage. I hope that helps. Word problems. Let's do it. If you paid $169.52 in income tax on gross monthly income of $1,304, what is your income tax rate? First, identify the amount, base, and percentage. Here, the percentage is unknown. The base is 1304 and the amount is 169.52. Okay, so let's look at our equation. Percentage times base equals A. So what is the percentage? What is the base? What is the amount? Well, we're looking for the percentage, so that's what's unknown. What is the base? This is where my is of kind of comes in, and it says gross monthly income of 1304. So that's letting me know that that is the base. Okay, so the 169.52, that is the amount. So I set up my equation, percentage times base equals amount. I can divide both sides by the base, which I've done so here. I find 0.13, that's 13%. So we paid 13% in income tax. Okay, let's look at another problem. If you have $610 taken out in taxes each month, how much is your gross pay if you have a tax rate of 12.5%? Okay, so we're given the percentage, and then we're also given the amount. We're looking for the base this time. So I set up my equation, percentage times base equals amount. Now I need to solve for that unknown base. What I'll do is I'll divide both sides by the percentage. Notice that I did change the percentage into a decimal. That's the only way this will work. And I found that it would be $4,880. So that would be the monthly gross pay. If we wanted to find the yearly, we would need to multiply by 12 months per year. In doing so, we'd find $58,560.